Well, I should introduce myself and some of the folks from the Pro-Life Action League who are here. I'm Eric Scheidler, as many of you probably have surmised, Executive Director of the Pro-Life Action League. And I've been helping to coordinate the Pro-Life Action League's protests and rallies and vigils and Jericho marches and other events since about 2003. But it's great to be here. I'm really thrilled. But I want to introduce you to Matt, who I referenced before, Matt Yankee. Many of you probably have emailed with Matt. In the back of the room is John Jansen, another one of our team members who checked you in. Over here, Ann and Joe Scheidler, my parents, and they founded the Pro-Life Action League in 1980, when I was just a freshman in high school. And this was after my dad had already been involved in the pro-life movement for 7 years, since Roe versus Wade, and shortly after Roe v. Wade was decided. He saw a need for direct action. He saw a real need for regular people to be doing what they can do in their own communities, in their own spheres of influence, to resist this, what at that time was still fairly new phenomenon of legal abortion in the United States. This sort of suicide pact that, as my dad put it back in 1973, that Roe versus Wade was. So that's what the Pro-Life Action League is all about, and you guys know that because you've worked with us in the past on different types of events around the country. How many of you have done a protest PP, one of the hashtag protest PP protests under that kind of a banner? Awesome. So thank you so much for participating in those and being here. I know others of you have maybe done, who's done a National Day of Remembrance for Aborted Children prayer vigil, or a Way of the Cross, or a Christmas caroling at the abortion facilities type of a thing. So different kinds of stuff being done around the country. One of the things that we've found to be really needed, and also something that we can do very effectively, and that has a really big impact, are these protests of Planned Parenthood fundraisers. So a little bit different from the Protest PP events that take place at Planned Parenthood facilities, or the Stand Up for Religious Freedom rallies we did in 2012 that were in federal plazas and court buildings. So we see an important room for expansion for the pro-life movement, and for local leaders like you, people who are already engaged and involved in this area of protesting Planned Parenthood fundraisers. So we wanted to do this seminar to provide all of those nuts and bolts tools that we've developed over the years to this project, and to give those to people like you who are going to use them and have an impact on Planned Parenthood on the ground. So we're going to start with a video that we put together just this past week. Does protesting abortion really make any difference? I wanted to debut this video here. This is something we're recognizing a need for this message. There are a lot of folks involved in the pro-life movement who are a little skittish about protest. You know, they're afraid it makes us look bad. They're afraid that it's not effective. They're just not enculturated into it. I've heard this from some of the leaders of Students for Life, that our students just don't want to protest things. They don't, even if they are protesting, they don't want to call it that. So we thought we need to address this issue and briefly explain to pro-lifers why this is so important. So, does protesting abortion really make any difference? I'm Eric Scheidler, Executive Director of the Pro-Life Action League, and my answer to that question is an emphatic yes. Let's look at 5 ways public protest plays a critical role in the fight to protect unborn children from abortion. Number 1, protest keeps abortion in the public eye. Most people never think about abortion unless they have to. Protesting abortion in the public square raises the issue in a way people can't ignore. Our dynamic, creative protests have kept people thinking about abortion, talking about abortion, and feeling deeply uncomfortable with abortion. Public protest has kept the pro-life issue alive. Number 2, protest educates the public about abortion. So many of our fellow Americans do not know that a baby's heart is already beating 3 weeks after conception, or that Planned Parenthood controls 35% of the abortion market, or what the abortion procedure actually does to its unborn victims. Every time we hit the streets to protest abortion, we educate the public directly on the injustice of abortion, the corruption of the abortion industry, and the value of life in the womb. Number 3, protest cuts through pro-abortion media bias. It's always hard to earn media coverage, but when we go out into the public square, we give the media a compelling reason to listen to us. We get to tell our story.
That's why public protest has always played a central role in any movement for social reform, and it's no different for the pro-life movement. Number 4, protest advances pro-life public policy. The President's decision in 2018 to cut Planned Parenthood's Title X funding, their second biggest source of federal tax dollars, was largely prompted by hundreds of defund Planned Parenthood rallies held all across the country. This is just one example of how protest can drive pro-life policy. Number 5, protest saves babies from abortion. I can't tell you how many times someone has come up to us during a protest to say our presence inspired them not to go through with an abortion. Former abortion clinic workers have reported that cancellations skyrocket when protesters are there. Sometimes protests even prompt abortion clinics to close their doors for a time, or permanently. Our public witness is saving lives. That's the power of protest. It keeps abortion in the public eye, educates our fellow Americans, cuts through media bias, advances pro-life policies, and saves lives. This is why the Pro-Life Action League puts such an emphasis on public protest, and why I'm inviting you to join the team. Visit prolifeaction.org to get plugged in and find out what you can do to be a public voice for our unborn brothers and sisters.
All right. Thank you. So how does this apply to this project of protesting Planned Parenthood fundraisers? Why do this specifically? Well, number 1, we get to educate the public on Planned Parenthood's true agenda. And when we're out there on the street with our signs, talking about Planned Parenthood, showing abortion, passing out flyers like this Getting to Know Planned Parenthood flyer that we'll look at a little more closely later, we get to educate the public about Planned Parenthood. We get to teach them that Planned Parenthood owns 35% of the abortion market, that they do only about 1 or 2% of STD diagnoses every year, that they play no role in mammograms, that even the manual breast exams they do are a tiny fraction of those throughout the country, that they offer almost no prenatal care, all these different things. We're able to share those with the public directly when we go out and do these kind of protests. We have the opportunity to tarnish Planned Parenthood's image in the media. Planned Parenthood doesn't want us out there at these protests, doing protests outside of their events, because they don't want to have to answer to our claims, our true claims about them and their abortion practice. And the media loves Planned Parenthood, and they want to do what they can to help Planned Parenthood. But when we're out there with our signs and pictures and our flyers and making a stink about things, the media tells part of that story. This, for me, may be the greatest reason to do it. It frustrates Planned Parenthood and their supporters. They hate it when we're there. And the image here is an image of a text message that was provided to us through a Freedom of Information Act request to the Park District of Chicago. Planned Parenthood was trying to find a place where they could protest, or they could hold their fundraiser, the annual fundraiser, which they ironically called Generations, which consider the fact that, yeah, they started out in 1970, I think 70 or 71 was their first abortion in New York. They started out killing my generation, Generation X. Then they moved on to the millennial generation, and now they're killing Generation Z, as some people call it. The 3 generations have been slaughtered by Planned Parenthood. And another 3 or 4 generations have suffered the consequences of making that choice and going to Planned Parenthood. So here's this text message. They've been holding this Generations Gala at different places all around. They held it for 3 years at Chicago's Navy Pier. The 3rd year, I got arrested there for simply taking a walk on the pier. I was found not guilty in court, and then I sued them, and we settled out of court. They took some hurt for that. And then they moved to another hotel, and then they finally were trying to find this place at the theater on the lake, right on Chicago's Lake Michigan, in hopes that they would avoid having any protesters. And so the text message reads, "Hello, sorry to pester, any word on protester policy? Planned Parenthood at deadline for decision." "Sorry, is it a private ticketed event?" "Yes, full buyout as well." And then this person responds, "You are not required to allow a protest area. You are within your rights to require them to stay out of your concession area of responsibility. Outside of your area, an event of more than 50 would require a permit. They have not applied for one, so give me the date and time and I would alert park security, da da da." So here's these internal communications about how they're trying to keep the protesters away. They thought they were going to keep us about 1.5 blocks, 2 blocks away on the other side of Chicago's Lakeshore Drive, this major thoroughfare along the lakefront. In reality, we were a lot closer than that. I'm going to show you a picture from that protest a little later. But this was really encouraging for us to see. You know, we figured they didn't like us being there. But this is rock solid proof that they're desperate to keep protesters away. They don't want their wealthy donors to have to see our pictures or confront our facts when they go to give money to Planned Parenthood at these events. And then finally, how can we not protest a celebration of abortion? If we couldn't point to a single concrete reason to do it, the fact that they're celebrating abortion, they're celebrating Roe versus Wade, right in our midst would be enough reason for us to go out there and do that. God forbid we come to a day when nobody is protesting abortion. What would that say about our culture? All right, so we must protest Planned Parenthood's events. What are the kinds of events that we might protest in this way? Well, there are several different types of events we could consider protesting. Major annual fundraisers, that gala, Generations Gala that I told you about, is their major annual fundraiser for Planned Parenthood of Illinois. They also hold annual Roe versus Wade celebrations around the country. In fact, as you'll see in a little bit, one of those is taking place in Chicago right now at yet another venue, because they keep moving them around. They keep getting chased away, and I'm not there. Matt and John aren't there either. My folks aren't there. We've got one of our board members and a whole bunch of volunteers protesting that tonight for the Pro-Life Action League. Trivia night. A couple years ago, Planned Parenthood started to do a trivia night at a place called Revolution Brewing Company on Milwaukee Avenue in Chicago. This used to be one of my favorite places. I used to take out-of-town guests there for dinner. I used to drink their beer. They have a really great IPA called Anti-Hero. And from time to time, I take pictures of me not buying their beer at the beer store and post them on their Facebook page, since they started to support Planned Parenthood with free beer, and now with this venue. So they do a trivia night. We went out there with signs saying there's nothing trivial about abortion. Talks by Planned Parenthood officials. So it's not just events that Planned Parenthood hosts, but other events. And we'll see some examples of those as we move along, where a Planned Parenthood person like a Cecile Richards will go somewhere to give a talk, and we show up to protest. And then there's events that are co-sponsored by Planned Parenthood. There was an event in Chicago a couple of years ago, a family planning council event that was held in secret at a very big hotel right in downtown Chicago, the Palmer House. And a staffer of the hotel was laying out materials for this event for Planned Parenthood, and his conscience started to bother him. So he contacted the Illinois Right to Life Committee, and they contacted us, and in 24 hours we organized a protest outside of this event, and we saw some crazy stuff. We saw Leroy Carhart. You may be familiar with him, the late-term abortionist, loading up his bags into a taxi, and a woman came out of the event, knelt down right next to my father, Joe Scheidler, and his abortion sign, and started to pray, thanking God for drawing her to this great mission of helping women through abortion. This crazy long prayer, which was really just a scold of the pro-lifers. So it was really a wonderful thing that we were able to find out about that protest at the very last minute. And we got a great crowd to come out and protest that. So different kinds of protests. Where do they take place? Oh, I quickly went past another point in there. They also hold smaller things. They'll do like a movie screening or a meetup or a volunteer training. And some of those types of events, if you've got the manpower and the energy for it, could be worth protesting. But often those are better candidates for, say, infiltration. You know, if they're doing a movie night, somebody goes and watches the movie and then starts asking pro-life questions. You know, we went to see a screening one time. It wasn't hosted by Planned Parenthood, but it was at a Chicago theater about the After Tiller, with the After Tiller movie, the documentary about the other late-term abortionists. So those can be helpful events to infiltrate rather than protest. And you got to be careful not to tax your volunteers. If you've got, like we do, 3 different Planned Parenthood events every single year that we go and protest, we have to be judicious in how often we put the call out for people to come out on the street for these kinds of things. So there are sometimes that an event is maybe not the best candidate for a protest. Or it's in a location that's impossible to protest at because there's no private property or there's absolutely no visibility. There's a place in Chicago called McCormick Place. It's a big, huge convention center. And from time to time, people have suggested that we protest the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists there. But there's no place to do it. It's just not possible. So there are times that we judiciously decide this isn't the right kind of event. So what kind of venues do Planned Parenthood use? Large hotels, especially for their annual fundraisers. Trendy bars and clubs. They love to be part of that trendy, hip vibe of the day. Tourist attractions. Here's a protest of a Planned Parenthood fundraiser at the Chicago Historical Society. They were only there for 1 year. I don't think the Chicago Historical Society really appreciated being connected with abortion. And it's a wonderful venue. I mean, they've got all kinds of Abraham Lincoln exhibits and Chicago history and other great stuff there. A wonderful resource for Chicagoans. Why do they want to be connected with abortion? I'm really glad they quit. Chicago's Navy Pier is another example. Colleges and universities, of course. Their speakers especially will go to such places. They love to get on campus. Community centers. We were able to get Planned Parenthood to turn an event that was supposed to be public shortly after they'd opened their mega center in Aurora, Illinois, into a private event which was attended only by their staff. No one else was allowed because it was at a public community center. We planned to protest it. We publicized that that's what we were going to do, and they got cold feet and they turned it into this invitation-only private event. I guess just to save face, because nobody was there who didn't actually work for them. It was sort of ridiculous. And then there's other locations like that theater on the lake I told you about a little while ago. That's helpful to know because each location is a little different. Different questions of public-private property lines. If they're at a large hotel, sometimes you'll find out that portions of the sidewalk will actually be privately controlled, which is really annoying, and a real usurpation of the First Amendment and public space. I mean, you guys are activists, so you know that this is happening, maybe in some places more than others. It's very bad in Chicago, where more and more public space is being handed over to private enterprise in one way or another. Navy Pier is a great example. It's Illinois' most popular tourist attraction. It's all public land, but they've got a private not-for-profit that actually manages it. And so they treat it like a private property and they try to control speech there. Sometimes the sidewalks in parts of Chicago will be painted black or with black concrete to indicate this is the sort of private property of the facility, even though people are walking by all the time. And then they'll tell us, we can't be there. So the type of venue can be really significant to what our protest plans are. But how do you find out about these events and where they're going to be? Here's some ways. First, you need to learn about your regional Planned Parenthood affiliate. So just go to Planned Parenthood's website, plannedparenthood.org, and type in your location, and you'll find out what their affiliate is. There are, I think, 59 or 60 different Planned Parenthood affiliates all around the country. The number of affiliates has been going down because they've been kind of uniting them. They've been folding them together. When Planned Parenthood came to Aurora, Illinois, where I live, that was Planned Parenthood Chicago area, and there was some other affiliates in the rest of the state. Now it's just Planned Parenthood of Illinois. So they've been kind of reducing, the number of affiliates over the years. You need to find out who your affiliate is, and then make sure that you determine whether or not they have a action arm. Most of them do. In Illinois, it's Planned Parenthood of Illinois and Planned Parenthood Illinois Action. Nationally, they have both a health center and an action arm. Planned Parenthood Federation of America, PPFA, and then Planned Parenthood Action. You need to be aware of both of these and get on both of their email lists. Like and follow both groups on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We haven't been able to find a really clear pattern as to whether they tend to publicize these types of events through one arm or the other. So the safest thing is to be on both, monitoring both arms, be on both of their email lists, follow both groups on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We only recently discovered, because we haven't been very active on Instagram, that Planned Parenthood is very active on Instagram. So that's going to be an area we're going to focus on going forward. So get on those email lists and monitor those websites regularly. you could set yourself a regular weekly calendar alert, or perhaps monthly would be fine, to, you know, set it for the first of the month to go and look at their website, look at events, and see if there's anything taking place in your area. You can also go to the Planned Parenthood Action national website to look for events there as well. But you should know that that website is not complete. I looked just the other day, and the gala taking place tonight in Chicago was not on their website. It was not on the National Action website. So they're a very large organization, and they've been trying to kind of formalize all their procedures for years, but it's taking a long time. So they're a little disorganized at times. So that means extra work for us. We need to stay on top of what they're doing so we won't miss out on anything. All right, so when you find out about one of these events, because you're on their email list and you're getting notices about it, and you're monitoring their website, you're maybe even looking at their annual report, you're following them on Facebook. By the way, you're going to have to click like on Planned Parenthood, and that's going to feel crappy because you don't like them. But like just means I like following this because I'm going to attack them, not because I like them. In fact, we've occasionally had people complain. Somebody once wrote to me and said, hey, you're friends with Stephanie Kifowit. I'm going to unfriend you if you don't unfriend her. Stephanie Kifowit is a very pro-abortion state representative in Illinois. I'm friends with her and like her page because I know her from when she used to be an alderman in my town. And she was actually somewhat helpful for us. She helped keep the pro-lifers from being shut down from speaking at public meetings of the city council, because she's a big believer in the First Amendment, whatever her views on abortion may be. She also voted in favor of a resolution calling on the state to enact, at long last, its parental notification law. Fast forward to today, this year we expect the Illinois legislature, which is now very pro-abortion, with a pro-abortion, super pro-abortion Democrat governor, to try to gut this law. Well, we've got her on record saying that this is something that needs to be done, that we need to have parental notification in the state of Illinois. So we'll see how that plays out. That's why I happen to be connected to her. I knew her personally and was interested in her political career. Doesn't mean I approve of her pro-abortion stance. So we sometimes have to click like on things we don't actually like. All right, so you find out about those events. The first step is to try to get them canceled. First, you respectfully request that the venue cancel the event. The best way to do that is probably through a personal letter sent through the mail with a stamp on it, signed in ink, explaining why Planned Parenthood is not an organization they should be supporting. Letters are probably more effective than phone calls or emails or Facebook messages, but those are all options for you as well. And you could even try to get everybody in the pro-life community to send those messages. Just be very careful to emphasize taking a respectful tone. The venue is going to get defensive, like we all do, if they're attacked. If you say, you know, you're a bunch of baby killers because you love Planned Parenthood, give them the benefit of the doubt. They may not know that Planned Parenthood is so deeply into abortion. Most people don't. They may not know that Planned Parenthood has lied to the public again and again and again, lied to Congress, lied about doing mammograms, lied about the harvesting and selling of baby body parts, lied about what their identity was when they were trying to move into a new town, creating front companies and so forth. Give them the benefit of the doubt and educate them. Very important to focus on Planned Parenthood's 35% share of the U.S. abortion market. That is a statistic that most people don't know. It burns right through that bogus 3% statistic they like to claim. Oh, abortion is only 3% of what we do. Yeah, that's crazy accounting. You know, according to the math of that, you know, that an abortion is only one of 7 things a woman does the day she comes to Planned Parenthood for an abortion. That's like saying that the place where I buy my car is actually a Skittles business. Because if I buy a bag of Skittles, you know, there's 40 Skittles in there, and I only bought one car. So a car was only 1/41th of what I bought that day. It's ridiculous. They do own 35% of the U.S. abortion market, and there's no other company we know of, major company in a major area, that has that percent of the market. Southwest Airlines is the biggest domestic airline. They have way less than 35% of the U.S. airline market. You know, and Chevrolet and all. You look at these companies; they would die of bliss if they had 35% of the market of anything. Planned Parenthood has 35% of the abortion market, and it keeps going up. Now you should know going into this that you are unlikely to succeed in getting an event canceled. It's just helpful to know that. Doesn't mean we don't give it all we've got, but even making that complaint can be successful in scuttling their plans for the next year. You're like, wow, I really don't want to cancel, but let's quietly not hold this event here again next year. So still very much worth doing. The picture there is a event that was supposed to be held at Waubonsee Community College called Women for Women with the, how are you supposed to pronounce that? Women. Women for Women. Canceled. It was canceled because they found out we were going to protest it. I was really disappointed when that was canceled on one level because we had a really great protest plan and we were going to get some super pictures. There was this walkway, second floor walkway between two buildings, and to, you know, the pictures of our abortion victim photos in the quad there would have been really great. We were also going to infiltrate it. They knew the audience was going to be 90% pro-lifers because we had this community that was just all fired up about Planned Parenthood moving into town. And so they canceled the event, citing security concerns, of course. They like to demonize us because that's the only thing they got. All right, so you haven't gotten their event canceled. It's time for your protest. Step number one is to create a dynamic theme for your protest. It's not just, we don't like Planned Parenthood, abortion is bad. We look for something to do with that protest that will be particularly interesting or effective or relevant to something. You'll see right there, this is a picture from that family planning council we found out about from the staffer at the Palmer House with our sign saying, Planned Parenthood sells baby parts. That was the message of that protest a few months before and of all the Protest PP stuff that fall. Planned Parenthood sells baby. That message alone was so compelling and so disturbing to pro-choice people. You're selling body parts for human health experiments? I mean, how can you say they're not human beings when you're trying to use their tissue to cure humans? So having a specific theme or message, it's inspiring for your volunteers. People would much rather come out to a, you know, there's nothing trivial about abortion protest than we're protesting Planned Parenthood again. Keeps things new and fresh. Same thing with the media. They love to see a story. They love to see something interesting. So you find your hook. You consider the special guests. Cecile Richards was a great special speaker at these events to put the focus on. We'll see some examples of that. Consider the venue. You know, Chicago's Navy Pier is a very popular tourist attraction, and we mulled around some different slogans that would have focused particularly on that venue. The type of event, like the trivia night, we use the word trivial, it becomes kind of our hook. The current news, what's happening today in the news, and it doesn't have to be related to abortion, it can be related to something else. You know, take for example family separation, the family separation at the border that's been going on. You know, that gives us an opportunity to talk about separating babies from their mothers by suctioning them out of their wombs. Talk about family separation. You know, so things in the news can be a really good hook for us at times. Then you use that theme on your signs, on your literature, and in your media outreach. So we're going to look at some examples of different themes or hooks the Pro-Life Action League has used over the years to do this job of keeping things fresh and exciting. All right, this was a really amazing protest. Gala with Cecile Richards. She was the guest speaker at Planned Parenthood of the Heartland, doing a fundraiser in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, back in 2010. We put together a coalition of just about every pro-life group in the state of Iowa in nearby Nebraska. So we had Nebraskans for Life, Iowans for Life, the group from just over the river was there. We had the folks from Dubuque. Planned Parenthood Bad for Dubuque. So this event was in Cedar Rapids, but we had Bad for Dubuque signs. So this was a statewide thing, and it was the state affiliate, or part of the state, that was hosting the event. So people brought their Bad for Dubuque signs, which I thought was really cool. That sign is based off of a sign we designed for the city of Aurora, Planned Parenthood Bad for Aurora. So Planned Parenthood ignored us when we started to complain about the fact that they had created a front company and pretended to be a multi-use medical facility and lied to city officials and snuck into Aurora. And they didn't want to acknowledge our protests, our prayer vigils, or anything like that, our speaking out at City Hall. But then finally they realized they had to, because we were starting to get media, we were starting to get the city council to pay attention, a fraud investigation was launched, and so they decided we need to go on the offensive with PR, and they created a bunch of yard signs that said, "This family stands with Planned Parenthood." And they started passing them out around the community. We started seeing these yard signs go up. And they would lie to people about what they were. Like, "Oh yeah, we provide free health care for women," which they don't do. There was a sign in the yard of a woman with Alzheimer's disease. Her neighbor knew she was suffering from dementia and had no idea what this sign was doing in her yard. So Planned Parenthood was super deceptive. So we decided we need yard signs. So we designed this very simple, very bold, black on yellow, Planned Parenthood, bad for Aurora signs. Within days, we had 2,000 signs up all over the city of Aurora and the neighboring communities. You literally could not drive a block without seeing one of these signs, if not 12 of these signs on that block. They were everywhere. And maybe once or twice a day you'd see "This family stands with Planned Parenthood" sign. So it completely backfired. It, in a visual way, represented for everyone in the community how unpopular Planned Parenthood really was. So I wanted to share this picture with you because I was really proud of seeing those signs out there. You'll see the umbrellas here. As we were driving out to Cedar Rapids, it was starting to rain and we were getting a little nervous, and it ended up raining really hard most of the time we were there. The FBI showed up. It was crazy.
What?
Yeah, it's a long story, but we dealt with it just fine. There was this access road we could not use because of the FBI. And we had a protest on both sides of the hotel, and the access road was supposed to be our channel of communication and the way we actually moved some of the people over there. So we had to reroute our march from a local park where we held a rally. And then we occasionally had to sneak from one side to the other, trespassing, I guess, technically, to get photographs and to communicate with each other. But the rain was a blessing because it brought the media out. They couldn't believe we're out here in the rain. It made us look so stalwart, getting poured on. And every single television station in Cedar Rapids, every newspaper, the public radio affiliate, they all came out and covered this event. All right, there was a gala with David Axelrod. This was the annual Roe versus Wade celebration on the 40th anniversary of Roe versus Wade. We went out there with our Planned Parenthood Lies to signs and our "Abortion is Nothing to Celebrate" signs. This is one of the very first times we used that slogan. We came up with it for that Cecile Richards protest. That was in our press material. This is "Abortion is Nothing to Celebrate." But it wasn't for a few years that we realized this needs to be on a sign. And so we went out there, and I was actually right at the door of this Carnival restaurant when David Axelrod, who was at that time, I don't think, was he still Barack Obama's guy at that point?
He just resigned.
He maybe just resigned as chief of staff for President Obama. He's a Chicago political guy. You're probably familiar with him. As he's walking into this restaurant, I called out to him, "Hey, David Axelrod, what about this little guy? What about the little guy?" Because he always talks about the little guy because he's a Democrat. "What about this little guy?" It was Baby Malachi and the Baby Malachi abortion victim sign. And we got really great media that night. It was a really good event. Brew Pub Trivia Night. This is the first one they did in 2017. There's nothing trivial about abortion. We went out there with these signs. We also brought our own little quiz sheet with some information, some quiz questions about Planned Parenthood, which now appear on the back of this Getting to Know Planned Parenthood flyer, the little quiz that's on the back. So if they're gonna have trivia about whatever weird stuff they have, I can imagine how vulgar and disgusting it must have been. Well, we're gonna have some trivia too, and it ain't so trivial. Planned Parenthood's role in abortion. That was a really great protest. Bizarrely, somebody in an apartment right next to Revolution Brewing Company put speakers up in their window and started blasting like Hillary Clinton speeches from the Democratic convention the year before and other stuff like that, other speeches from that convention. It was a noise ordinance violation. The cops didn't seem to care. It just made the whole thing more uncomfortable for their guests, because we don't care. We expect to be yelled at, you know. Who expects to be yelled at when they go to a fundraiser? So it actually helped us out. Oh, you'll see, over and over again, the story of pro-life activism is the story of the other side overreaching and having things backfire. This was a gala Generations Gala with Cecile Richards. I think this was the first year they were at Chicago's Navy Pier that you can see there in the background. Cecile Richards was speaking, and so we made signs that said, "Ahead, President of Abortion Incorporated." Now, what does that mean to somebody driving by? Not much, but we had other signs that the cars would have seen before. Planned Parenthood lies to you, Planned Parenthood bad, and all these kind of things, and abortion victim photos. So that sign made sense in context. Oh, Planned Parenthood is Abortion Incorporated. That's what I like to call Planned Parenthood, Abortion Incorporated. That's who they are. So that was our theme for that protest. Wendy Davis came to speak at a Planned Parenthood fundraiser in Dearborn, Michigan in 2015. You remember her. She's the Texas state senator who filibustered for hours and hours, maybe a couple of days, to try to stop HB 2 from being passed in Texas, which ended up shutting down a host of abortion facilities and then later being partially overturned by the United States Supreme Court in the Hellerstedt decision. Well, she did that filibuster wearing her pink tennis shoes. And that became a big symbol of her pink shoes. Everyone started wearing pink shoes, and MSNBC did an ad campaign with pink shoes. Well, the unborn baby in this picture, this little girl, will never get to wear pink shoes, thanks to Planned Parenthood. One young mother came to this protest with her little girl. The mom was wearing pink shoes, and the little toddler was wearing pink shoes, and her dolly was wearing pink shoes, her little baby doll. I was really particularly tickled by that image. This girl will never get to wear pink shoes. So again, the hook, taking something special. In this case, it was the public speaker, Wendy Davis, and her story in the news that we used as our hook, as our theme. Cecile Richards came to give a talk in 2015, right after the undercover videos came out showing Planned Parenthood and their harvesting baby parts scheme. At something called the Chicago Ideas Week. You may be familiar, some of you, with TED Talks, right? Those little brainiac talks on, items of importance and elucidation. Well, Chicago does something similar called Chicago Ideas Week. Different events held all throughout this week, different speakers. And Cecile Richards came to talk. So we came out with signs saying, "Cecile Richards, abortion is always a bad idea." Always a bad idea. And that was our theme. This is the annual Roe v. Wade celebration in 2015. Don't really have a particular theme to talk about other than nothing to celebrate here, but I wanted to show you this sign. These guys, this was another case where we were in Washington, D.C. for the March for Life, and we had to have some local volunteers organized. And one of our board members, a guy named Chris Iverson, some of you may know on Facebook, made this sign with LEDs. Oh, wow. Abortion takes human life, because it was at a venue in the dark. And well, it's not dark anymore now because they've got this amazing sign. I wanted to share that with you. I'm really pleased with that. And then we have the Generations Gala in 2014. We did a Burma Shave style series of signs. Navy Pier tonight, Planned Parenthood abortion party. Oh, wow. Yeah, with pictures of poor little baby Malachi on them. Dick Durbin. Senator Dick Durbin, senior senator from Illinois, very important on the Judiciary Committee and all of that, used to be pro-life. Did you know that? He used to be very strongly pro-life. We have letters that he wrote to constituents about why abortion is wrong. Very clear-headed. He knew exactly why. He spoke at the March for Life in Springfield, our state capital, when he was a state rep. And he decided it was politically expedient to support abortion. So we called on Senator Durbin to return to his pro-life roots. And it was really funny, when he showed up, his limo or taxi or whatever pulled up across the street and sort of stopped, and we could see him kind of peering out the window like a deer in the headlights. Whoa, wait a minute, there's a protest. Whoa, whoa. So the car kind of like backed up, and then I guess they figured out there was a private parking lot behind the venue, so they sped into that, and he snuck in through the back door. How likely is Durbin to come to another one of these after going through that experience? The event went on as planned, but I don't think Senator Durbin's going to be that excited about showing up at another Planned Parenthood fundraiser. Another time, I don't think it was that year, it might have been, it was the same venue, a place called the Bottom Lounge in Chicago. Jane Curtin, remember her from Saturday Night Live? She was supposed to be the guest speaker. When we arrived, there was a limousine sitting out in front of the venue, but no one was getting out of it. And then we set up our signs and the limousine sped off. And it turned out, we found out from the news later, that Jane Curtin had had to video her address through Skype or something from her hotel in Chicago, or who knows what the details were, but we suspected that may have been her deciding she doesn't want to be any part of an event where there's protesters outside. Who knows, but that might have been the case. Cecile Richards came to the University of Chicago to give a talk right after the election in 2016. I think it was supposed to be a victory tour because they assumed they were going to win. And it was about the future of reproductive rights. The future was the theme of her talk. So our sign said, what about his future? What about this little baby's future? Making it relevant to the talk of the day. And we infiltrated that. The Students for Life group at University of Chicago was kind of afraid to protest. You know, students are sort of like that sometimes. I met with the head of the pro-life group, and he was like, well, you know, I guess I can see using the abortion sign sometimes, but I mean, this is a college campus. People have really tender feelings. Like snowflake. And this is at University of Chicago, which has an explicit policy against safe spaces and deplatforming and that kind of thing. So that was a little bit disappointing, but they did infiltrate the talk, and they were able to ask some questions, and so they did some good in that way. All right, so those are the types of protests we've done and some of the hooks we've used. I thought you might find it helpful to see examples of what we're talking about. So let's move on to the nuts and bolts of the protest. First of all, preparing your signage and literature. You can get a protest pack from the Pro-Life Action League. We have several different protest packs. We have a Planned Parenthood protest pack with signs that say Planned Parenthood harvests baby parts, Planned Parenthood lies to you, and a few others that I'll show you. We have a pack with Moms and Dads for Life signs. We've got these new abortion, nothing to celebrate signs I'm going to show you in a minute. So you get that protest pack, and that gives you your kind of core signs. Abortion victim signs are always appropriate for protests like these. I ran into a friend of mine who's here at the March for Life who doesn't really like the use of abortion victim photos. She's occasionally complained about it, even in public, and described that in sort of negative terms that have annoyed me a little bit. But even she said today, when I told her about the seminar we're doing here, she said, well, that's the one time I really think you need to have abortion signs. Yeah. When Planned Parenthood is celebrating abortion, it's always appropriate to bring an abortion sign out. You can also order the new Abortion is Nothing to Celebrate signs. I'm going to hold one of these up for you. These are not literally hot off the presses. It's cooled down. But they are very new. Oh, there's a little bit nicer one that isn't bad. Abortion is Nothing to Celebrate. We realize these signs are, we keep printing them or trying to keep the ones around and not get too dirty because they're just printed on paper. We need to get these made and ship these around the country. So these are now available for purchase on the Pro-Life Action League website. And when I say for purchase, we sell them at cost, even a little less than cost. We end up losing money on them with shipping a little bit because we believe so strongly this is a message that needs to be out there. All right, you can supplement those core signs that are applicable to any kind of abortion celebration or any kind of Planned Parenthood event with specific signs like that, which at that time was a specific sign, abortion is nothing to celebrate, or the other signs that I just showed you that emphasize your theme. We generally like to have about 6 to 12 of the specific signs in addition to the victim photos. You can see that sign is clamped to an abortion victim sign. Some fairly inexpensive plastic clamps. You don't want to use the metal ones because they can be really strong and end up sort of squishing and smushing your stuff. But the plastic ones, a little softer, really great way to get more bang for your buck. You've got one person, but they're holding two signs because the smaller sign is clamped onto the bigger one. When you make signs like that, and you've got your theme and you've created a sign, get those professionally printed. That means on paper at a large format printer like a FedEx Office, and then you mount them on Coroplast. You can get Coroplast from sign producers. You maybe convince them to sell you at low cost, maybe 6 or 12 blanks, white Coroplast cut to a size of 18 by 24 that you have available whenever you need to mount a sign. We have tons of this Coroplast around the office that we can affix signs to. Or you could use very sturdy cardboard. Not this type of thin cardboard, but corrugated cardboard that's sturdier. So your signs look good. The pro-life movement has perfected grassroots activism over the last several decades. And we show up with really great looking signs. We look more sort of accessible to the public. We look more impressive. It puts the fear of God into our opponents because they see we're organized. We've got professionally printed signs. You know, the sign that's written in a thin marker on, you know, neon paper is not visible. If it has 25 words on it, no one's going to be able to read them. So we keep those slogans short and brief. We get them professionally printed and mounted, and they look good. I also encourage you for these types of protests to get our Getting to Know Planned Parenthood flyers, which you've all got in front of you. This flyer was designed to, what do we call it, a stealth flyer. It's stealthy, secretive. It's pink. It uses a telka, which is the typeface that Planned Parenthood introduced for the new logo that they launched on the day that Barack Obama was elected president. Did you know that was the day they came up with their new logo and their new typeface? That was the day they launched it. Getting to Know Planned Parenthood. Pictures of Cecil Richards and a health center and a little conversation. And you open it up, and the first panel, the first fold, who's right about Planned Parenthood? You might have seen them in the news. There's some say this, some say that. Take a look inside and decide for yourself. We've got both sides. Go all the way in, boom. Abortion, 35%. The inside of this piece talks about Planned Parenthood's minimal, insignificant role in healthcare, about Planned Parenthood's legal violations and deceit, and then Planned Parenthood's massive role in abortion. And on the very back of it, we have a little quiz people can take and be educated by. And it's so cool when they have their trivia night to bring our own little quiz out and hand it off to the public. So that's a great resource, and we keep on printing those because people love them. You might want other literature. Sometimes we will take a quarter sheet and stuff it into this, or staple it on, or we have another similar kind of a piece, the same shape, about the abortion victim signs that we have, and we will paste a little explanation of what's going on today so that we can maybe supplement that a little bit. But generally speaking, this piece of literature alone is very effective for any kind of a protest of a Planned Parenthood type of event. All right, here's some of the signs available from the Pro-Life Action League's online store. And again, I didn't call this meeting here at the Renaissance in Washington, D.C. as a sales event to make sales for the Pro-Life Action League. We sell these signs that are actually a little bit below cost, but I wanted you to know what some of them are. We have the, of course, famous Stop Abortion Now signs, which I know you've seen, I know you've all held, you're going to see them tomorrow. What you may not know is that Joe Scheidler created that sign back in the 1970s. This was before the Pro-Life Action League. Was that Illinois Right to Life days?
Yeah. We folded them all up so they came out.
Yeah, you fold the octagon sections over, and then you've got this tight little space. You can put it inside and then unveil it when you get to the event. Brilliant. We redesigned those signs some years ago and started to put them on this milk crate material, which is so much cheaper to use and so much lighter and easier, and cheaper to ship and so forth. And we went and actually got street sign fonts to use. So that's the typeface you see on street signs, called Road Geek or something like that. Moms for life, dads for life. The story behind those signs has to do with a toy company. Can you believe it? In 2005, the American Girl Doll Company decided to partner with an organization called Girls Incorporated. I've got 6 daughters. The name Girls Incorporated just sounds wrong to me. It doesn't say girls, it doesn't sound like a girly thing at all. Girls Inc. used to be the Girls Clubs of America. They're now a radical pro-abortion, pro-lesbian, kind of anti-male, anti-homemaker, anti-mother kind of a group. American Girl Doll was not trying to promote abortion, but they wanted a partnership with somebody, something meaningful. You could buy a bracelet from them for $1, and the dollar would go to Girls Incorporated. Some mother found out about this, realized there was a connection to this pro-abortion group, got in touch with us. We launched a national boycott. We held protests at the American Girl Place store in Chicago and in New York. There were only 2 of them at that time. And one of my neighbor's daughters took their American Girl dolls out, took some pencils and some little index cards and made picket signs for their American Girl dolls against American Girl Doll, against Girls Incorporated. And that gave us the idea of making little tiny signs that said Girls for Life. So we made some smaller, it's a little bit smaller than these, signs that the girls could hold. And then we made really little 6-inch by 6-inch signs that the dolls could hold. And my sons put them together. We designed them with rubber bands so that they could stick around the girls' hands so it looked like they were holding the signs. So we have these wonderful photos of all these little girls with all bundled up in their jackets because it was late fall with their little dolls with the Girls for Life signs that they were holding. So cool. American Girl Doll, like days after these protests took place, announced that they were pleased with their partnership with Girls Incorporated, but that was coming to an end. At the end of the year, they kind of quietly shuffled it up. And then they launched a whole new campaign about recovering girlhood. You have a cookie baking party with your friend. They had to restore their public image after being destroyed by this stupid partnership they had with this this pro-abortion group. So Moms for Life and Dads for Life signs came from that. Not just the girls, but their parents were there too, supporting life. And we realized this is an important sign. People love them, so we've kept them in stock. Planned Parenthood Lies to You came from our fight against Planned Parenthood in Aurora, Illinois, because they had literally lied to the alderman. We don't know who our tenant is going to be, said a guy who works for Planned Parenthood and does their lawyering and their engineering and stuff. He did it again last year, again in Illinois. Same guy, obfuscated to the city of Flossmoor about who his client really was. Planned Parenthood Lies to You. Planned Parenthood Harvests Baby Parts, you know that one, and where that came from, 2015. Defund Planned Parenthood, those signs came out in 15 or 16 and were very important in the massive defund Planned Parenthood rallies that took place in 2017 and that have continued to take place and that helped to get that rule change that stripped Planned Parenthood of their Title X funding that I talked about in the video. And now finally, most recent sign we've offered, abortion is nothing to celebrate. So that's now part of the arsenal that any pro-life activists around the country can get their hands on. All right, so you've got your signs, you've got your theme, you've got to get somebody to come out and join you for the protest. How do you do it? Well, email is very, very important for these kinds of things. It's our primary way of recruiting people. We have their email addresses, they're loyal volunteers, so they read our emails. And there's a lot to say about how to write an effective email and a lot more to say about how not to write an ineffective email. And we have some of that information at prolifeaction.org. But one thing I really want to emphasize to you is always send out your emails as if you're writing to one person. And that's a very important piece of information for you. If you learn nothing else from this seminar, that alone is going to be effective for you. When you say, hey everybody, no one listens. If you say, hey guys, I need a volunteer to ... Unless you've got extremely motivated people, a whole lot of folks are going to say somebody else. That's somebody else's problem. It's somebody else's problem. I get so many emails that if an email is not to me, I know I don't have to read it. I can't possibly. If I were to read every email that's not addressed to me, I would lose my mind. So write that email. Even if you don't have a system that can use a first name, I encourage you to get a system like that that can say, Dear Mary, or Hi Bob. That's best. But way better than, hey everybody, is Dear Pro-Life Friend, or, you know, My Pro-Life Friend, or specifically talking to one person. For me, it's somebody named Mary. That's the name I use. Every time I have to write a letter, a fundraising letter, or an email, it's always, Dear Mary. Hey Mary, that's the name I say to myself so that I'm talking specifically to one person. It's a good exercise for you personally as well, because when you think about one person with a name, you're going to make your message more relevant. You're going to be thinking, what is going to stir a person? Not what might get one person out of 50 to do something. What's going to make one person get fired up? Write that email personally. Personal phone calls are probably your most effective recruitment tool if you can do it. It's hard to say no to people when they ask you directly, in person or on the phone, to do something with them. I know these days a lot of people are afraid of the phone. They don't like to ever pick up a phone. They want to do everything with digital stuff. But phone calls are still a very effective thing. Like I said before, I've got 6 daughters. 2 Two of them have boyfriends. The boyfriends happen to be brothers, which is weird. But Claire, the older girl, she and her boyfriend talk on the phone all the time. She has a special ringtone for him. And it's the most adorable thing. They talk on the phone just like we used to do back in the dark ages of the 1980s. Whereas the other one, it's always texting. I don't know what that says, but I think phone calls are a lost art and a very powerful way to get people to come out to things. Create a Facebook event. There's the Facebook event for the protest I am missing right now. It just got started a little while ago. I hope it's going well. That's our Facebook event. That's become a more and more effective way for us to reach people. People follow us. We've done Facebook advertising for events like this. So boosting them, throwing 10, 20, even $50 at a protest we're doing. And we've had people come out. And it's an amazing thing. When you've got two people who show up to something, we had a group of, I think it was like 6 siblings, homeschooled kids who came to that protest at the theater on the lake, the one with the text messages they were trying to keep us away from. And they found out about us on Facebook. We spent like $20 on that Facebook ad. That $20 is just worth its weight in gold, if that makes any sense. Let's say that it was $20 of pennies. And how much that weighs. Because these are like new activists. These are people who hadn't done anything like this before. And they came out to this thing. It was so encouraging. So Facebook can be really important. Repeat that message though. If you don't just create the event and think people will stumble into it, you got to share it. If you've got an organization and a personal page, share it on both of those pages and share it again and again and again so people will see it and get involved and come out. You can get full instructions for recruitment on the pro-life basic training pages at prolifeaction.org, because this is a very big area and we've written a whole lot about it, because you've got your church bulletins, you've got your flyers, you've got your public service announcements on the radio, you've got a whole lot more information about how to write effective emails and other tools like that that are already prepared for you for any kind of recruitment at prolifeaction.org on the pro-life basic training pages in the Take Action section of the website. All right, reaching out to the media and earning coverage. That's part of what we want to do here. It's not our only mission. We don't cry about it if they don't turn up. But let's take every opportunity we can to get good media. Here I am talking to an NPR reporter at that Cedar Rapids protest in the rain that I told you about. I'm kind of a nerd, and I love it when I get interviewed by NPR. That's my favorite, because I actually listen to NPR. I can't have any stomach for talk radio or for Fox News. I don't really watch TV, but I listen to NPR. I don't agree with their politics, but I do love to hear a complete sentence. That's just something. I mean, I was an English major, and I like that. I like big words, and I like people who act like they're smart. So that was a real cool. I loved getting interviewed by them. The thing is, even with pro-choice bias, the media like a good story. And, 200 pro-lifers standing out in driving rain protesting the head of the nation's largest abortion provider is a good story. And they want to cover a thing like that. Let's take advantage of that desire for good stories. We should stop complaining about media bias. Well, what good does it do? I saw a post from somebody this past week. We had the March for Life Chicago last weekend. It was a great event. We had 9,000 people come out, and it was really upbeat, and we got covered by the media. There was an article in the Chicago Tribune. Victory! Victory! They covered our event. They didn't have to, and they did. This guy's post on Facebook was, fake news! Fake news! They didn't say how many people were there, who the guest speakers were, reprint all their speeches, or whatever it was. All he could see was the negative, because that's, not because he's a bad or negative guy, but that's what he's been trained to do. All we do is bitch and moan about the media and the pro-life movement. Look, I'm not denying the media bias is there, but what good does it do to complain about it? Zero. It does nothing to complain about it. What does something is to forget about the bias and just try to get them interested in our story and recognize every story is a victory. I've had people write and say, oh, Eric, this media coverage was so bad, and they didn't tell me. People were there and it wasn't the right thing. And they cut my interview off, and I look at the story and I'm like, I would be doing backflips if I'd gotten this media and could do backflips. But let's be excited about it. Let's recognize, as my dad, Joe Scheidler, always says, there's no such thing as bad press. There's press and there's no press. Bad press is no press. Good press is any press. So we tell our story in the media every chance we get. So you got to build up that media list. in advance, including the hyper-local media. This is getting more important. That local reporter who's a freelancer who sometimes is able to sell something to the local paper and sometimes not, but has a blog that people look at. Or the Patch that is still around in some places, the Patch media company that covers hyper-local stuff. Or even Facebook groups dedicated to your neighborhood or community. These can be ways to get your message out. A lot of it is citizen journalism. You could actually write articles yourself for some of these hyper-local media venues that allow you one more way to get things out into the public. There's a guy named Jeff who has a goofy blog and an article that sometimes shows up in local papers called The First Ward. His last name's Ward, Jeff Ward. The First Ward. And he puts out stuff about all kinds of community stuff. And he's a guy I know on Facebook, and he did an interview with me one time and my pro-life work. And building those relationships and being as friendly as we can with the media is super important. Always emphasize your protest theme in your press release. Have a good quote about it. Be careful in your press release that you're editorializing, talking about things yourself. What my opinion is always inside of quotation marks. Cover the 5 W's: where, when, why, who, what's going on. Keep it short. I've seen so many 4 or 5 page press releases. Those wind up in the garbage or in the computer trash. 1 page press release with a couple punchy quotes is what you need. 5 W's. Keep the editorializing. My opinion is, or Planned Parenthood is wicked for this reason. Keep those inside of the quotes that you do. There's a whole series of instructions on press releases at prolifeaction.org. Don't be discouraged if you don't get coverage. Very often, you don't get coverage for this event, but you get noticed. They appreciate the courtesy with which you wrote to them. And then the next time around, they do cover you, because now they kind of know who you are. And they've seen, maybe after the fact, that you did something interesting because you were respectful. Even if you have to complain, even if there's something false, like you got this wrong. Don't say you got this wrong, you rabid proboard. What the hell's wrong with you? What journalism school did you go to? They should have flunked you. No. Hey, Bobs, thank you so much for covering this event. I really appreciate it. It was great getting to meet you. I've stored your contact information. But can I just share one thing that wasn't quite right about this? And I've actually had reporters change articles when I was respectful and thoughtful to them and said, this wasn't really right. Oh, let me see if I can make a change with my editor. Follow up with the media after your protests. We always do this. We send out a follow-up message with a couple of photos. Hey, I thought you'd like to know how this thing went. It's very, very short. Here's 3 bullet points of highlights. Here's my 3 photos. Thanks so much for your interest in this event. I'm always available for an interview or something like that. Because sometimes the media will cover an event afterwards. They realize, hey, we missed an opportunity. We should have been there, but now we've got the pictures, we got the story. We can maybe call up the other side and get a quote and do something now. Again, get your full instructions on the Pro-Life Basic Training pages. There's something there called the 10 Commandments of media engagement that's very worth reading, all about how to shed that bad attitude so many of us have about media, how to relate to reporters, how to prepare yourself for an interview, and all that kind of stuff. Great tools already there for you at prolifeaction.org. All right, planning your protest, time, place, and other related issues. First of all, visit the protest site in advance to familiarize yourself with it. We, more and more, we're doing this with the assistance of Google Maps. We spend a lot of time on Google Maps and Google Street View checking things out. This is that lakefront theater on the lake protest, the one with the text messages trying to get rid of us. We went and visited that months in advance to see what the lay of the land was, because the Google Street View was showing the way it looked before major renovations. So we really had no idea. I hadn't been to that part of the lakefront in a long time. So we went out there, we shot a bunch of pictures, we took some video. We took video of where the public were walking, and congregating, and passing by so that we would know where the police would have to allow us to be. So we got the evidence from on the ground. So we were really prepared. We'd scoped out the place. We knew where we were going to drop people off, where we were going to drop our signs off, where we were going to station everything, where we were going to park. It was all figured out well in advance. We figured out exactly where the public and private property lines were, or the quasi-private, because it's being managed by a private company, where we wouldn't be able to go, where we would be able to go. I recommend starting your protest 30 minutes before the event starts. A couple slides back, I showed you that Facebook event for the protest tonight in Chicago. It started at 5:30 which is 6:30 here, so a little while ago, because the event, the VIP reception, was starting at 6. So we knew if we got there at 5:30, everyone showing up for the VIP reception will be coming during that first half hour or so. And then as the event gets closer to its proper start time after the VIP thing, they'll be coming in for the next half an hour to an hour. So half an hour before, stay until the guests have arrived, but almost never more than 90 minutes. We often play it by ear on a protest like this. We'll, on our publicizing materials, we will only give a start time. I highly recommend doing that. Starting at 9. Always put AM or PM, because sometimes people will ask, at 6. Is your protest at 6 a.m.? No. Or is it at 12 p.m., 12 a.m.? It's not at midnight. So don't forget your AMs and PMs. It's amazing kind of questions people will have. We found over many years that 90 minutes is about the maximum that volunteers can stand. You can convince volunteers to stay out a little bit longer, especially if they're very loyal. But if you're making them stand out there for 2 hours the first time they ever come to a thing, or 2.5 or 3 hours, and I've seen protests like that, they may never come back. 90 minutes, anybody can handle that. And I expect these people to keep coming back, and I'm going to keep asking them to come back. They're going to get hours and hours and hours of pro-life activism. They don't have to all be in the same day. Spread them out, 90 minutes at a time. And sometimes we call it early. No more guests are arriving. It's 5 degrees out. Most of us are frostbitten. We're all going to head to the hospital next to have our toes cut off. Let's call it a little bit early. All the guests have arrived. All right, stand where the guests and public will see you. See that sign there? You can see Matt here holding that sign. Remember this face. Aborted 15 weeks. Every single guest for this event, they were trying to keep us from being anywhere near, had to walk right past that sign from the valet parking. Every guest entering had to see that sign, and as they passed by, Matt said, "Hey, remember this face. Remember this guy when you're enjoying your dinner tonight. Remember this face. This is what you're supporting." It was the time of his life. Matt had really loved it. That was one of the best protests we ever had, and that's because we were right there. And you may want to spread out. You'll notice, many of you probably have already observed this, when counter-protesters show up or when the pro-abortion side does a protest, they all cluster. They cluster and they're afraid to spread out. They're afraid to stand by themselves. So they're kind of cowardly. Because they're alone. We're never alone. We've always got the Holy Spirit. We're never alone. So we can spread out. We can cover a whole city block with our signs and look really big and reach people at all 3 entrances of the place because we're not afraid. Bring sign-up sheets. Get your volunteers' contact information. Very important. Seems obvious, but it's not. That group of kids who showed up to this protest because they saw us on Facebook, we've got their contact information. We were able to send them emails and get them to come out to the next thing. Get that contact information. In fact, speaking of which, I'm going to pass this sheet around right now. This is our sheet. We don't have mailing addresses for any of you guys on here. Some of you, we have your mailing address, but it's just not on the sheet. But if you could find your name on here, and a couple people, we don't have phone numbers, we'll pass this around. If you need a pen, Jen will grab one for you. We've got a whole cluster of them back there. So we can better stay in touch with you guys. So get that contact information. And also remember, security guards are not police. They think they're police. They're not police. You can see some of the guys in the background here. One of them's a cop and one of them's a security guard. And the security guard came out and said, "You guys can't be here. You can't be here. I'm security. Get out. You have to be over there on the other side of Lakeshore Drive." And Matt was like, "No." "Well, I'm going to call the police." "Good. Please do. You know what? Let me call them." Security guards are not police. You need to know that. They don't have police authority. But some people are police, the actual police. And we need to be able to work with them. There's a Chicago cop at the City Winery, a venue I wish I could go to. One of my favorite musicians, Nick Lowe, has played there before. Langhorne Slim, another favorite musician, has played there. And I can't go to there because they always host these Planned Parenthood parties. The cops there are pretty nice outside of that place. So working with police, dealing with counter-protesters. Should you inform police about your protest? I say usually not. We do inform police about our, what we call Face the Truth tours, where we go from city to city to city, displaying the abortion victim photos on the corners of major intersections, spread out down the roadway, as a courtesy and to short-circuit any problems we might have. Our letters are not asking for permission. They're simply informing the police that we're arriving. We have our lawyers send them out. The lawyers fax the letters out and say, you know, our clients are going to be doing this, and we fully expect you to support and uphold and defend their First Amendment rights. Contact us if there are any issues. We occasionally have police chiefs call us up and say, you need a permit or whatever, and we've never had a problem that has ended up sticking because they don't want the trouble. But for these kinds of protests, where it's an event taking place in a discrete location, generally not needed to inform the police and can sometimes cause problems. We did contact the police about protesting at Navy Pier because we knew there were going to be public-private property questions. And Navy Pier got involved, and they created a protest area for us, you know, in the basement where no one would see us. And we decided not to do that, which really upset them. And we think that's part of the reason that they later had me arrested a couple years later in that lawsuit I told you about. So, you know, contacting the police sometimes isn't the best idea. And for these kinds of protests, I don't think there's any obligation to, and we generally don't advise it. But you know best from your own activism what kind of relationship you have with the police. And there may be times. If you're not sure, give me a call. I'd be happy to talk to you about it. When the police arrive, and they generally do arrive for things like this, rarely do we have a protest where the police don't show up. I mean, I'm glad we live in a country where people do a kind of interesting thing and the police show up. You know, it's well organized. They show up and they just want to know, hey, you know, how long are you going to be here? How many of you to expect? You know, here's my number. I have cops giving me their business cards all the time. I keep a file of them, sort of a little memento, like a scrapbook of all the cops I got to meet. And they're usually pretty mellow. And sometimes people freak out about the cops. You know, they get upset because the police have showed up and they get defensive. And hey, we have a right to be here. Okay, I know. You know, the cops are usually pretty cool. And there's some cops with chips on their shoulders. Some of you probably met them. I've met some really nasty ones. I got arrested by one once. But generally speaking, they're nothing to fear. They just want to know what you're doing, and if you're cool, they'll be cool too. Sometimes they will make unfair demands. You know, they'll say you have to move your signs over here, or you can't be in front of this restaurant that my buddy owns, or whatever. We advise that you respectfully, civilly object to any demands that you really consider to be unfair, unreasonable, or unconstitutional. Say, officer, I really am reluctant to do that because I know that I have a right to be here. I've checked. These are the public property lines. You know, this is what we're allowed to do as American citizens. Very often the police will back down. Or they'll find some kind of face-saving thing. They'll be like, well, you know, if you could just move the signs a little bit this way or that way. And I could say, no, I don't have to and I'm not going to. But what do I care? I move my sign over 4 feet. Makes them feel okay. They don't feel like they're not a cop anymore. And so they're satisfied. Doesn't affect me much. I, you know, give a little bit, compromise just a tiny bit, so that I can carry on with my day. Because I'm not there to get arrested. I'm there to fight with the police. I'm there to give Planned Parenthood a hard time and reach the general public. If they are threatening to arrest you, I think it's generally best, unless you've planned well in advance, we are here to get arrested, which is a whole separate question, and we can talk about that later. Unless that's your objective, you need to not get arrested. So simply comply with their directive. We've even had times where we have stopped a protest because the police said, we're going to arrest you now. We've been tussling with them for 15 minutes. We got the lawyers on the phone. The chief of police came out on his day off. They are going to arrest 50 people, starting with me. They're going to impound all of our signs. We're not going to be able to go on to the next protest site in the next town later that day, let alone the next week. We've already got planned. Not worth it. Not worth it. So what we did instead was we complied, and then we sued them. They decided they didn't want to be sued. We made arrangements to come out and do that protest another time at an even better location, and we were successful because we were smart. We complied that day, complained later. That's what our attorneys always recommend. Comply today, complain tomorrow, bring a lawsuit. Here's a counter-protester at one of those Planned Parenthood Roe v. Wade celebrations. Wow. With a vulgar sign, I won't read the F your fetus fetish. You know, I wondered, looking at that now, if that wasn't some attempt, an early attempt at one of those handmade signs. This was several handmaiden. This was before the handmaiden thing had really gotten big, so I'm not sure. But it was freaky. She had a freaky sign, and she was dressed freaky. But even this freako did not bother us. She didn't engage with us. She just stood at the end of the block with her message. There was no problem at all. You know, the cops were there. Was nothing to worry about.
You've never been roundhouse kicked?
No, I have not. Hey, it happens sometimes in Canada.
There was an American woman that was just
Where's
roundhouse
John?
kicked.
John was knocked to the ground by a drunk guy in downtown Chicago one day. He went to the back of our van and started hurling our signs out of the back of the van out into busy traffic on Wacker Drive in the rain and knocked John down. We grabbed the guy, a whole bunch of us grabbed the guy. The cops came and it was crazy. He had to apologize and everything. One of the cops was really uncooperative. I didn't smell any alcohol. The guy reeked. He reeked. But that said, let's not play that up too much. Problems with counter-protesters are extremely rare. They can be very obnoxious, but they generally aren't a problem. They're almost never violent. So how do you deal with them? Be sure to arrive early and stake out your space. If you're there before they are, then you get to be where you are, and they can't. They want to scuttle what you're doing. They want to stop you. So you show up early, they show up on time, and they lose. Don't let the counter-protesters distract you. That's a real temptation. It's best not to engage with them, especially the volunteers. You know, they'll get into a big argument, a shouting match or something like that. That's not the person you want to waste your breath on. There are times that we can reach them, and there may be relationships you can build up. I don't want to say anyone's beyond redemption. But when you're out there, you want to talk to the public. The passers-by are the ones you're going to be able to engage with. And they may say some obnoxious thing, but then you respond to them respectfully and they get into a conversation. The counter-protesters are hardcore. And if they're going to convert, it's not going to be on the spot during a protest. It's going to be later because you were nice to them that day. You found something else to talk about. Maybe you guys have a common interest. It turns out they like to bake bread. You like to bake bread. What's your favorite recipe? Talk about something else with them to build that relationship if converting them is what you're about. But that's not our first focus when we're protesting a Planned Parenthood fundraiser. If they threaten you or they act out in any bad way, call 911. Call 911 right away if they're acting out, if they're threatening you or anything like that. Documenting and sharing about your protest. You should assign a team member to take videos and photos. So somebody on your team is actually responsible for that. Always shoot horizontal video, very important. That means like this. When you shoot video like this, it looks like you're looking through a keyhole. You've seen those videos on YouTube where it's black screen for most of it and then some narrow little thing, and all the moms and dads in the world are shooting their kids' recitals and plays and things this way. Turn that. It's sort of unnatural because you use your phone this way, but turn your phone, horizontal video, widescreen, you can see everything, much more effective. Post those photos and video on social media, especially on Facebook. Getting that stuff out there is so important because it becomes part of the narrative of the pro-life movement. Your protest becomes part of the widespread, nationwide pro-life movement. And pro-choice people see it. Friends of yours that are fence-sitters see it. Friends of yours who are pro-life but have never been to an event see it. See it's perfectly safe and normal. Lots of nice, smiling people come out. This is something maybe they should be involved with too. And there's one of our Protest PP leaders sharing about this protest they did, a Planned Parenthood trying to open up in Baldwin Park, California. And let the Pro-Life Action League know all about your protest. The best thing that can happen during a week is for us to get an email from somebody or a Facebook message or a phone call from somebody who just protested Planned Parenthood that week using some of our signs, and they want to tell us about it. I mean, that just makes our day. It makes our week. It makes our month. It's so exciting to see those pictures. I mean, we sit there and we design these signs and we put them up on our store, we ship them out, and that's all great. But when we get to see them in use, out on the street at Planned Parenthood's Funder or Planned Parenthood's Trivia Night or whatever, that's just so awesome. So please do let us know about those things when you do them. Planning for your next protest. Invite people at other pro-life events to attend your Funder protest. So if you've got a 40 Days for Life campaign you're involved with, and there's a protest coming up, whether it's at Planned Parenthood or one of these fundraiser type of protests or a prayer vigil or a National Day of Remembrance service, whatever it is, invite people at one pro-life event to attend the other one. People who are willing to come to a prayer vigil may not have ever been invited to go to a protest. It may not be something that they're comfortable with or familiar with, but you've got them right here involved. You know, who wants to take the next step? Who's really ready to commit to something else? Raises your hand. All right, come to this protest next week, next month. Many of these types of events are annual, so mark your calendar. We now know to expect Planned Parenthood to hold a trivia night in August or September every year. We know that they're going to hold their Generation's annual fundraising gala sometime in April or early May. We know they're going to hold a Roe versus Wade celebration in late January, mid to late January, perhaps early February. So we're looking in advance, being ready for those things. And please do get in touch with the Pro-Life Action League if you need any kind of help with your protest. You know, you found out about a Planned Parenthood fundraiser. Get in touch with us. Let us know. Hey, what kind of a theme should we use for this protest? What kind of an angle can I use for the media? What tools can I use to get people about? Do you know anybody? Because we got contacts all over the country. We may be able to put you in touch with somebody in your own town or your state who would be a helpful contact for you. And then finally, you can get your complete protest guide with all of this information and much more at prolifeaction.org/action/ppfunder. And that /action, that's our Take Action section of our website. There's a ton of stuff there about different things that we do that we encourage other people to do around the country. So that's a great resource for you. So I want to thank you all from the very bottom of my heart for coming out here today. If I've said anything that's challenging or you disagree with, please don't take offense. Just write me an email. We can talk about it. Because, you know. Oh, yeah. If anybody wants to.